I welcome all the students to the video lecture on the topic Information Security Policy. Information Security Policy is the topic which is related with the second unit of our syllabus. The title of the second unit is Information Security and Disaster Recovery Plan. In this second unit, in our earlier lecture, we studied the very first point of the second unit, that is about problems related to IT security. In problems, while discussing about the problems which are related with the IT security, we studied some important issues which are related with the area of information technology. There are different types of threats emerged while using the data, or while using transferring the data, using the data, compiling the data. In this area of information technology, there emerged various types of threats. Some types of frauds do occur in the area of information technology. For example, in the earlier lecture, I have given some examples of some frauds which are related with the computer system. Means virus, phishing, identity frauds. These are some types of frauds which we do occur while using the information security, while using the information communication technology. So we have to keep the patience and we have to be very alert while using this information communication technology or various devices of information communication technology. Nowadays, we do need a lot of information for performing certain tasks. And while performing certain type of given tasks, we do use computers. We do connect our computers and laptops with internet. And we do collect the information. We share the information. And we utilize that information for the interpretation. So this using the information, transferring the information means while collecting the data, while transferring the data, we should be very alert while utilizing the various devices of information and communication technology. For in order to maintain the security, in order to be very safe and secure, utilize these data with a safe and secure manner, we should be very alert. So how we should be alert, that we will be learning, that we will learn in this information security policy. So in order to overcome the threats which are related with this information communication technology, the threats which are constantly evolving, and it become very complex to utilize the available data because of these information security threats, information communication security threats. It disturbs us while utilizing this information, while utilizing this data which is available. So what the concept of information security policy is, that we will learn at the initial moment, and after learning the meaning of information security, we will learn some important elements which should be considered while developing this information security. In order to protect the available amount of data, the information security policy is needed. In order to overcome the threats related to the in order to overcome the threats which are related with different types of online frauds, the information security is needed. And to develop the information security policy for an organization, the organization may be a large organization, or the organization may be a short organization or small organization. Small or large organization, they do design the information security policy for the safety and security of the organization. So let us start discussion on this information security policy. First of all, we will learn the meaning of this information security. Information security policy is a type of security program for the organization. Just I mentioned the size of the organization, it may be a small organization or it may be a large organization. Every organizational unit, they need to design certain security program for the safety and security of their data while utilizing the available data, while transforming the available data from one individual to another individual. It needs to keep the safety and security. It needs to keep the secrecy of the information. So in order to keep this secrecy, in order to keep this safety, the organization is needed to chalk out the security program, and that security program, the designing of that security program, is known as information security policy. The information security policy for that particular organization. For example, consider bank as an organization. There are number of public sector banks, private banks, foreign banks functioning over there in our country. Out of these various banks, take an example of a public sector bank, say State Bank of India or Bank of Maharashtra. These are the organization, and it needs to design the information security policy for these organizations. As a banking organization, the State Bank of India, they do design their own information security policy. They can store the data. The bank, this particular State Bank of India, they do collect some information. They do have some information within their organization. They can transfer this information to the concerned other organizations. They can transfer the data, they can utilize the data, they can keep and store the data, and to function all these very safely and securely, it needs to chalk out some information security policy. That security program of the organization is known as information security policy. Why this information security policy is needed to chalk down? It is for the threats which arises because of certain security threats which arises frequently while utilizing this information or while utilizing these assets, IT assets. Their organizations, they do face some security threats while using information technology or while using various information technology assets or devices. To overcome, in order to overcome these threats, in order to overcome these all challenges, it needs to frame the information security policy. Information security policy is nothing but is a set of rules and regulations that guides the individual who are working over there in that organization. It is the set of rules and regulations which guide the individual, means which guide the worker who is working over there. It guides the employee who is working over there in the organization. What it guides, what are the rules and regulations, they do guide them how to utilize these data, how to keep or maintain the safety and security of the available data. Therefore, in other words, information security policy is a set of rules that guides individuals who work in the information technology asset. There are some security protocols and procedures. The organization needs to chalk out these security protocols and procedures. They need to write down what are the protocols, and they need to determine what are the security protocols and what procedures is required to follow to maintain the safety and security of the information. So these security protocols, these security procedures, whichever the protocols and procedures chalked down by the organization, is known as information security policy. This is the simple meaning of information security policy. After understanding this information security policy, now we will move towards some important key components of information security. Means while designing this information security policy, while developing this information security policy, what are the factors which should be considered? Just I given one example. State Bank of India is the banking organization. Maharashtra Bank is another banking organization. HDFC Bank is the other banking organization. So these all banking organization, they do develop their own information security policy, and all these organization do share the secrets, the user IDs and passwords, whichever they have been developed for the security. They do share these all things with their employees. Means the bank employee who is working in the State Bank of India, he can access the data, he can transfer the data, he can utilize the data, he can see that data whichever available in their system. In the same way, the person who is working in other organization, take an example HDFC Bank, the employee who is working in that particular organization, they do access the data which have been authorized to that particular person. In the same way, the employee of State Bank of India, he also can access the information which is needed for their own work. But it doesn't mean that the person from HDFC Bank will get into the data of the State Bank of India, or it doesn't mean that the person who is working, or the employee who is working in State Bank, he will get the information security data of the HDFC. These two banking organizations, they are working separately, so they do maintain their own security policies at their own ends. So in this way, each and every organization, in order to protect their data and information, they do design the information security policy of their own. And what are the important components or key components which the organizations consider while developing this information security? First one is purpose or intention of designing this information security should be considered. Means there takes place the misuses of networks, misuses of data, misuse of application, misuse of computer system. So in order to prevent this misuse of networks, data, application, computer system, it needs to develop the information security policy. The very first purpose, first intention of developing this information security policy is to protect from the misuse of all these things, misuse of networks, misuse of data, misuse of computers. Then the second intention is to maintain the reputation of the organization. In order to maintain the reputation of the organization among their customers, among their beneficiaries, it needs to keep, it needs to develop their own information security policy, to establish certain ethical values, to establish certain legal responsibilities among the employees who are working over there in the organization. It needs to develop certain information security policy to protect the rights of the customers, to protect the rights of the beneficiaries of that particular organization. It needs to develop certain type of security policy is needed. Therefore, these are, we can say, these are various purposes. For what purpose the organization is developing this information security policy, that should be chalked. The purpose of the protection should be chalked out at the initial moment. This is the first component. Means while designing information security policy, one should look into the purpose for what purpose it is needed to design or to chalk out the information security policy. Now move towards the second component. Second component entitled as audience. Audience in the sense who are the beneficiaries or who are the users of this information security policy, means for whom this information security policy is applied. It is the for whom the information security policy is designed. This information security policy, as usual, is designed for the employees who are working or functioning in that particular organization. For example, staff or employee of the banking organization which uses this information security, which manages this security policy, and in the scope, who uses this information security policy, what is the scope of this information security policy. It will be the scope of the information security policy is determined by its audiences, is determined by the users who do utilize these policies at practical level in that organization. That audience should be determined. If you look towards the hierarchy of the organization, in the hierarchy of the organization, some authority is there who is looking over all this matter. Then under that authority, consider managing director is the topmost. Under the managing director, some other directors do works. Under the director, some employees will work. Under the employees, some sub-employees will work. From the top level of management, if you look towards the hierarchy, then who can utilize this information security policy, that should be determined at the initial. Whether the manager is the person who can access this, whether the director is the person who can access this, whether the employee is the person or the clerk who can access this, whether the peon or the security boy or who else is the person who is responsible who can access this information of that particular organization, that should be determined. Means scope of the information policy should be determined at the initial level. This is the second component. The third component is about information security objectives. It means what are the objectives behind determining this information security policy. What are the information security objectives that should be determined while framing the information security? There are three components of information security objective. First one is confidentiality, means individuals without authorization are not in a position to access the data or information of a particular. Means while designing this information security policy, what the first thing we should do while determining the information security objectives, what the first thing we need to do is to maintain the confidentiality. Confidentiality means to determine who is the person who can access a particular data, who is the person who can access the particular information. Means if manager has given authority to access a particular data, then we should be check whether at the same time when manager is an authorized person to access, then whether the clerk will be the authorized person to access, whether the same data access should be given to peon, whether the same data access should be given to ward, uh, should be given to the watchman, or to whom it should be given. That should be determined in order to maintain the confidentiality of the data. The second component of information security objective is integrity. Means how the data is accurate and complete. how it is integrated, how the information is integrated, that should be keep in mind. And the third component of information security objectives is about the availability. Means the availability of the data, and users should be able to access information or that particular system whenever they need. It means while framing the information security policy, we must look into the matter of availability of the information or availability of the data to whoever to whom we have given access, whether they are in a position to access that data at any time, whenever they needed, they can access the data or not. It is also considered in information security. Next component is about authority and access control. Authority and access control policy means it is the point which is related with the hierarchical pattern of the organization. For example, consider the in the hierarchy at the top position of the management, the director is there, and under the director, the managers are working, and under the managers, some clerical staff is working, and under the clerical staff, some uh, other working persons, other the persons like junior clerks are working. So who is the authorized person to whom the access of this information and data should be given? It should be determined at the initial level. In this hierarchy, the director, he disseminates his authority to the managers, and how this what amount of authority should be disseminated to the managers, and how these managers disseminates their authority towards their the persons who are working under there. For example, how they disseminates their information, their authority towards the clerk. In this hierarchical system, while transferring the data from one authority to another, there should be maintain the access control policy. There should be maintained the access control policy, how the access should be going to the person who is working with the linking chain, who is working with one another. So this is what authority and access control. Whether the director keeps all the security policy with himself, or whether the director gives certain freedom to their managers to work over there at their own level. Means whether the director allows them managers to access the important information. We can classify the information in different categories: secret information, top secret information, moderate information. So what sort of information is the manager, or what sort of information is the director is permitting to access to the managers, and what sort of information the managers are permitting access for the clerks? So these all things should be determined with the authority. This access control policy should be determined. Whether the top secret information is secret, secrecy is maintained with the higher authority itself, or the higher authority is sharing that secret information with other colleagues who are working over it. So these all should be determined in authority and access control policy. The next key component is about data classification. In this data classification, the data can be classified. While framing the information security policy, another important component is about the data classification. Means how we classify the available amount of data with the organization. On what ground we classify this data. For example, some data or information, it should be classified as top secret, some should be classified as secret, some information should be classified as confidential, some should be public. Means top secret, secret, confidential, public. In this way, we are in a position to classify the available amount of data, whichever that data is available with the organization. Then after classification, the organization can determine to whom we can give access to the top secret data, whether the top secret access of the top secret data should be given to director, or it should be given to director as well as the managers, or whether the secret data should be given access to managers as well as clerks. And confidential data, who is the authorized person to access the confidential data, it all should be determined. And in order to determine this, it needs to classify the data in different categories. Next component is security awareness. This security, it needs to create awareness among all the individuals, all the employees who are working over there in organization. Then and then only the implementation of the information security policy. Then and then only the chalking out or the drafting of the information security is possible. Information security policy is possible. What are the security awareness and what is the behavior of the personnel who are working over there in the organization? It should be look at the initial moment. The social engineering is necessary, clean policy is necessary, whether you allow, what is this security awareness means, how we can access the data, what sort of data we can access over there in the system, it should be determined. We should be, the employees should be very aware about this. It means uh, when the employees are using their laptops and computers, then they should be very aware about the policies. They should be very aware while utilizing these connected devices. So what sort of data they can access. For example, if you open our mobile phone or computer, then we can access any of the data. You open YouTube, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, everything. But while working over there in an organization as a responsible person, then the access should be the that person who is working over there in the organization, he should limit his access. He should determine the boundaries for while accessing the information. So he should be very aware while utilizing that, while using that particular system over there. So he should be very aware. That is what the security aware. And the next point, the next key component while designing the information security policy is about responsibilities, rights, and duties of the person. Means how the individuals or the personnel who are working over there in the organization, how do they maintain their responsibility? What are the rights of the individuals and personals who are working? What are the duties and what are the rights of these all staff, these all personals, these are employees who are working over there? It should be noted down. For in order to create an awareness among the employees, the meeting should be conducted. It is needed to provide some training programs to these employees regarding this. Therefore, responsibilities, rights, and duties of the personnel is another important component of information security policy. In this way, in this particular lecture, we discussed about the information security policy, and in this lecture, I stop here and thank you for your patience.